bring them out right now. First off, she plays Julie on the show, Lila, Rich Creek, Estrada. Next up, she is Emily on the show, Mary Elizabeth Ellis. Put your hands in the air for the national treasure himself, the one and only Teddanson. And the creator, the writer, the director, the showrunner, Mr. Mike Schur. Forever when I introduce Teddanson, I have to add American treasure, Teddanson. You never get tired of that, right, Ted? No, I don't. It's in your writer, so I read it. I made sure. So
humility is so unattractive.
Well, you've earned it. So, and again, another hit show. How many hit shows can one person be in? But Teddanson, I think, has broken all the records. And I got to say, a man on the inside, I was looking at the numbers, looking at the Nielsen numbers. This thing's a hit. A lot of people watching this damn show, Mike.
Good. I don't know what you want to say. You never know, right? You never know when you make something if it's going to connect. I did feel with this show a couple things. One of them was that it is a subject matter that we, as a country, I think are pretty bad at discussing. And that's silly and ironic because, aging is what happens if you're lucky. If you are lucky, you get to live a long, full life full of experience, and that means your kids grow, and then you have grandkids, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that we shy away from discussing it in all of its glory and in all of its difficulty. And so I felt like, with this subject matter, with this man at the center of it, ought to be something that connected with people, ideally. And if I felt like if we were true to the documentary, it's based on a documentary from Chile called The Mole Agent, which is wonderful. And if we were true to the spirit of the documentary, if we were honest in our portrayal of aging, if we didn't try to pull our punch, if we really delved into some of the serious problems that come with it, that it ought to strike a nerve with people of different ages.
And I think that's why it's great that we're here at the Motion Picture and Television Fund to celebrate this show, and want to thank everyone for coming out today to celebrate the show, of course, and also shout out to some of our special guests in the audience. In addition to our TV Academy voters, we have some of the residents from the Motion Picture and Television Fund here. So thank you for coming and joining us. And also, we're live streaming this conversation to residents in their rooms. So there's also folks watching us right now. After the talk about season 1 of A Man on the Inside, we just saw the first 2 episodes, of course. And
the last 2. You saw the last 2.
Oh, the last 2, sorry. We saw the last 2. So let's talk a little bit about that, first off. Well, first, Mike, I want to begin by embarrassing you. As I should, because you got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame today. So, what was that like, and how does that feel now to know that people are going to be walking on your name every single day?
As I said in the speech I gave, also Ted spoke and was lovely and made me cry and made everyone else cry. It was a very surreal experience. I did not honestly know that writers were even eligible to be on the Walk of Fame. That's not a thing writers think about or have as a life goal. I've been at Universal Television continuously for 27 and a half years, which is pretty wild, yeah. And those folks very kindly sort of pushed the agenda, I think, and got me nominated, and then I received this honor, and it was wonderful. It was I looked out. These 2 ladies were there from this show, and there were folks from a lot of the other shows I've worked on over the years, and it was just a very heartwarming experience for me to see writers and actors and producers from 1998, which is when I started writing, to the present, So it was wonderful. I don't know. I don't love being in spotlights. That's why I'm a writer, not an actor. But
Although, let's remind everyone.
come on, he
let's
does this.
Remind everyone of his star role as Mose on television's The Office. You opened that up, Mike.
I did. I walked right into that trap. If you haven't seen The Office, I did play a wordless character with a bad beard who mostly just ran around like a dog, like a loose dog is really what I did. So I wouldn't call it acting. I would call it forced physical exertion.
But you got your SAG card out of it, so.
Yes, I am a SAG-AFTRA member, yes.
So there you go. But nonetheless, it's so great to have like the cast from a number of your shows, including, of course, The Good Place, which is why this was such a great. Yeah, shout out to The Good Place. Which is why this was so special to have this reunion with Ted and to do another now really well-received show together. So this is you guys, there is some magic in what you two do. Ted, talk a little bit about that in taking us back to when Mike first called you and said, "We've got another idea for you."
First off, the magic happens because you have really good writing and really good actors, and then you have at least a shot at the magic. The Good Place kind of changed, reinvigorated my career because it was so popular with 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old people coming up and enjoying humor and smart and bright. So forever grateful for that. But it was just fun to be part of something that was meaningful, that talked about something important that we don't talk about, and that's kind of what I would like to do with the rest of my life as an actor is put things out into the world that are purposeful and make people feel better about who they are and how they are. So this came along through Morgan and Mike, and it was just a no-brainer first off because I wanted to work with them. But then I did watch the Mole Agent, and it's just so sweet, so kind, so gentle, and also it had that message at the end that you weren't prepared for, that there's nothing wrong with this retirement home. They're doing a great job. It's the daughter of the person who made the complaint, who never showed up, never visited her mother, and her mother was dying slowly of grief. And that was, that whole thing was kind of, how to make it funny was beyond me. I thought, oh, wow. But anyway, it was an easy choice.
Yeah, and that the first episode sort of has some of those beats from the film as well. So, Mike, what was it about sort of those beats from The Mole Agent that it convinced you and Morgan that you could find a way to make this funny, but also touching?
Well, we didn't screen this obviously today, but in the pilot episode, Ted's character Charles is just sort of wandering around his house. You see him go through an entire day of his life without speaking out loud to anyone. And his daughter, Mary's character, comes and visits him and says, you need to find something that makes you happy, that moves you, that's full of passion. And that's the part of the documentary that seemed the most ripe to be sort of like expanded was that in the film, in the documentary, Sergio is the man's name, and his daughter, there's a brief scene with his daughter where his daughter says, I don't know about this. This seems like a very risky thing for you to do. And Sergio says, ever since your mom died, I just haven't known what to do with myself, and I think this would be good for me. And that's sort of the last time you see his daughter. So the first thing I thought was, okay, if we're gonna tell this story in 8 episodes of a TV season, the daughter needs to be a big part of it. Like I'm 49, my parents are in their late 70s, and I understood that daughter. I understood what she was going through, and I thought, one of the most interesting aspects of this to me is how the generations interact with each other. So Mary Elizabeth's character was the first one that I thought, like, okay, I need to add that. And then we went on we did, and that character is a big part of the whole season, as you saw from the end, when they shared a trauma together. She lost her mom, he lost his wife, and I just thought that needed to be a big part of the story. And so, thank goodness we found Mary Elizabeth to play that role.
Yeah. So, Mary Elizabeth, when you first sort of saw this role and realized that you were going to be working closely with Ted Danson, and these are two characters.
The monster.
Exactly. You're like, are you sure? But the idea that both of these characters are dealing with grief, but in very different ways, and you're going to be able to really explore that in addition to doing some really funny stuff with them, but also get to really act out some really dramatic emotional moments too with them.
Yeah, we got to do a chemistry test together for Mike and for Morgan Sackett, who also co-created the show.
Produces it, and it was his idea to adapt it, so
Yeah.
essentially, yeah.
So Morgan is around a lot as well, and so of course, Ted's a legend, but is so humble and open and like a puppy. Like a puppy.
Like a puppy.
Don't you think? Yeah, like always like, what are we doing? What's next? How are we gonna play? Are we gonna play? We're gonna play, which is infectious to be around, and makes me younger. So thanks. Yeah, so it was exciting to be able to get to do comedy in the hands of people who have been doing comedy for so long and know what they want so strongly, but also to be able to mix in some of these real life feelings, because that's what life is, right? It's sad and it's happy at the same time, and it's all encompassing. And I feel like people's reaction to the show shows that we really hit on that.
One of the things that I've told Mike a couple of times too is your family on the show is probably some of the most realistic kids and just dynamics of what it's like to be raising Gen Z kids at this moment in time. You guys really nailed that. What was that like in sort of building that family and seeing reflected on how kind of kids look and act these days?
Well, just to set this up properly, if you haven't seen the show, Emily and her husband Joel have 3 sons who are probably
teenagers.
13, 15, 16 in that range. And all 3 of them are 100% modeled on my son. It's 3 versions of my son.
Which you wouldn't believe, because they seem modeled on my son, who's a 13-year-old.
Right, and it turns out that by modeling them on my son, I was unintentionally modeling them on everyone's son who's that age. You didn't get to see them a lot in the 2 episodes we screened, but there is a lengthy sequence in the 2nd episode where one of the kids doesn't want the food that his parents made for them, and they're at the end of their rope, and he says, "Can I just have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?" And Mary Elizabeth says, in exactly the right tone of voice, "Sure, if you make it yourself." And what follows is like a 90-second sequence where he just can't. He just
Doesn't know where the bread is.
Doesn't know where the
where the knife is.
Doesn't know where anything is, and it is one of the most painfully real parenting experiences. And I love watching that scene, and I love you watching those kids who are great.
The kids are so good, such good actors.
And from talking to you and having shared tales of woe, it is such a joy to be able to commiserate with you about raising teenagers.
I think as parents we feel seen with your sons as well.
Good.
So,
Yeah, thank you.
That in writing that generation, you just put the word bro in every
line.
Yeah.
Every single line.
And where are my fill in the blank shoes? I don't know. We're in the car. You didn't put them on. You just don't have shoes on. Out in the world is a real thing.
So, Lila, you get to some degree some of the most fun with Ted because you truly are sort of the foils for each other, especially early on as you're recruiting him and realizing this guy. I just don't know about this guy. Talk about sort of getting to know Ted and working with him, especially with some of those delicious back and forths that you got to have with him.
Yeah, Working with Ted A was very easy. He is a delight to be around, and so is Charles. And I love nothing more than playing a deadpan character who is unfazed and unflapped by delightfulness. I, Lila Richcreek Estrada, am very flapped by delightfulness. So it's not, I'm not channeling me at all, but so to have to play someone who is just completely unamused by Charles's delightfulness was hard, but Ted and I developing a real friendship throughout the season, I think shows as you get deeper into the season too, and like the back and forth and just like the mutual love and respect for each other, I think is real. Okay, good.
He said backstage.
Oh,
by the
no.
actor. Just kidding.
They've been through stuff now, so at least they sort of, they know each other, they understand each other now.
Exactly, yeah. So it was just fun and easy, and the deeper our friendship got and the more we got to know each other as people, I think just the better the acting became. And now, you know, we're working on season 2 now, and I'm not going to spoil anything because I'm not allowed to. But yeah, we were talking about that last week of how you can feel the friendship between us, at least when we're in scenes together, which I think
It's kind of tricky right now because we're halfway through the second season, which progresses everything. And so I'm listening to some of these questions, what's it like to work with Ted? And I know that they're way over that. So it's kind of like,
The novelty's a little bit,
yeah. I went thin very quickly.
well, how about, then even better, what's it like to work with Mary Steenburgen? That's the real question. So,
dream.
It is, she's one of those people, and I told Ted he was like this too in the first season, where you're in the middle of a scene and then you're like, I'm in the scene of Mary Steenburgen. Like, it just seems like unreal that it's happening, right? Yeah.
She is also an absolute delight and is so grounded and cool, like the coolest person in existence, maybe, I don't know, but she's very cool and easy and fun, and like getting to see also Ted and her be together on set is pretty cool too.
Yeah, to be clear, Mary joined our cast this year and is playing Charles's new love interest. Ted had the very difficult job of pretending to love the woman he loves more than everyone else on earth combined. You really sold it, though.
Yeah, he's gobsmacked.
How was that
That's what
chemistry
word
test?
is for.
Acting.
You know, it's so amazing for us because Mary's first film was shot at Paramount. Cheers was shot at Paramount. This year, even though we're Universal Production because of what the architecture offered the story, we're at Paramount. And that's dreamy. The fires made us move to Laurel Canyon. So we're back in the 70s. It's just like so exciting. And then we literally giggle in the morning, not believing that at our, Mary's 72, I'm 77, and we get to get up and play people who are madly in love with each other and with funny, poignant, fun, different, quirky dialogue coming from Mike. It is such a blessing. I can't thank you enough. And, you know, we are just thrilled. So anyway, yeah, it's pretty cool. Usually when there's a close-up, you're pretending to work off the other person. Because you know that's what you're supposed to do as an actor. I would probably go, I wonder how I'm looking, and then I'd look in at Mary's eyes and it'd be like, oh my God. I would just be, she's kind of like Stephen McKinley Henderson. You do kind of fall into her eyes. Enough about my wife. I'm madly in love with her. We get to work together, and I'm so glad you like her. There you are.
I'm glad you mentioned, Stephen, and all of these actors who you were able to cast this season, Mike. I mean, just some great performances for people who maybe hadn't been working as much recently. But You found sort of a great supporting cast, and you're bringing more people on next season. Talk a little bit about that and who you were able to find this season and the riches that you got out of that.
Well, in the first season, I've worked for a very long time with a casting director named Allison Jones, who is the best in the business. She cast so many great comedies. She cast The Office and Parks and Recreation and Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Curb Your Enthusiasm and Freaks and Geeks and Arrested Development and on and on and on and on.
And we thank her for Moe's.
We do indeed, yes. So I said to her when we wrote the pilot for the first season, I said, we're going to need a pretty large cast of folks that are, well north of 70. And, what do you think about that? And she says, oh, it'll be easy. And I was like, really? She said, yeah, there are great actors, wonderful actors out there. It's just that parts don't get written for them. And so we wrote a bunch of characters and had an amazing plethora of people come in and so many options and so many great people. And we ended up, Sally Struthers is in the show, Stephen McKinley Henderson, she's wonderful. John Getz, who plays Elliot, who's sort of in the season is sort of Charles's nemesis, who you saw briefly at the end of the 7th episode when Charles and Calvert come home and they saw the dog in the park and they're like, oh, it reminds me of Elliot. And then you see the guy walk by and goes, what the hell are you looking at? That guy. John is fabulous and has a number of wonderful moments over the course of the season. And the same is true this year. We had new roles for actors north of 70 and filled them very easily. And obviously it helps when one of the main actors in the show happens to be married to an Oscar winner, and you can just call her on the phone and say, would you like to be in the show? And she says yes. But role after role after role, we found people who were just wonderful. And that has been a true delight. I worked on a number of shows, The Office in Brooklyn Nine-Nine and The Good Place, where you're just casting their normal sort of sitcoms and a variety of people at different ages. And then this is an entirely new world, and it's been just so fun to find and hire and employ all these wonderful actors who just don't get parts written for them at their age. And so that has been a really wonderful part.
Super cool to get to work with just television legends. That table read, that first table read, I was like, everybody is just nailing it.
Sally Struthers backstage in the between setups in the scene casually mentioned to all of us that when she was, how old, does anyone remember?
It was after All in the Family.
It was after All in the Family, so she was 20 something. She was like, oh yeah, I dated Elvis. For a long time, she dated Elvis, and just like that was we'd been working with her for months. It was like, how is that not the first thing you say to everyone you meet? Hello, my name is Sally Struthers. I dated Elvis for several months.
And she didn't call him Elvis; she called him E.
E, yes, that was her nickname for him. E.
And that's when you say, okay, we're shutting down production the rest of the day. We're
Take
just
2 hours.
yeah.
Send everyone home. Sally's got to tell us 10,000 stories.
And that's Mike's next show, Sally Struthers and Elvis. I do, going back to the relationship actually between your two characters, because there's a little bit of a, rivalry between the daughter and sort of the, almost adopted daughter to some degree, and especially in the beginning when she's, when Lila, your character, is pretending to be Charles's daughter, and then Mary Elizabeth, your character, discovers the ruse and is like, what is going on? It's fun to see you two also spar a little bit. Talk about that, and maybe is there a continuation of that?
There might be some fun unfolding in season 2. That's maybe all I'm allowed to say about that.
Just quickly, in the third episode of the season, so Julie, the private investigator, is posing as Charles's daughter, and Emily doesn't know, his real daughter, doesn't know what he's doing, and she comes to find him living at Pacific View, walks in, sees Julie, and Julie stands up and says, hi, I'm Emily Newendike, Charles's daughter, and then immediately says, uh-oh. And then Emily, the real Emily's response is, yeah, uh-oh. And so that's how Emily learns about the job that Charles has taken, which he didn't tell her about. So there's a lot of tension at the beginning between the two of them. That's the setup.
But then also, the real Emily gets involved in the case and does her own secret mission in that same episode. So really, you're welcome.
Thank you.
For your new passion in life.
It's true. I think it's a nice thing to touch on though, because it is, right? Like when we have older parents, or like my grandmother's 98, and we're constantly, people are constantly texting like, hey, it's me from the Philippines. You owe me money for your traffic ticket. That happens to me all the time. So I do think we're like constantly on guard of like, is someone taking advantage of like my dad, And one thing that's great about this being a comedy is that like, nope, that's not happening. Like he chose to do this, he's here, and now we get to go on this wild adventure with him.
Yeah, no, it's a great moment. If you've seen the movie Thelma with June Squibb, and also kind of touches on what you're exactly talking about. It's sort of a great moment that we're seeing a little more representation of folks and discussing honestly about aging. And this is a show that is allowing people to talk about it a little bit more. I'm curious, Ted or any of you, if you've heard from people who have come up to you and said, this really meant something to me.
Oh, I think we all have. And I'll answer that, but first a shout out to Susan Rattan, who I don't know if you saw in the last 2 episodes. She is you do at the very end, but her job, the actor's job, was playing somebody who is going into memory care and who's slowly losing all of her memories. And if she had had a false note as an actor, you as the audience would have gone, or wow, they're making use of this very serious, condition to tell their story, would have felt manipulative or whatever. And she didn't. She was just so spot on and so moving. So Susan Rattan, brilliant. I'll tell you one. We've all got my parents, and boy, we're going through this and all that. The one that moved me was, and thank God, because it was in a restaurant. A lot of times, well, not me personally, but you go, oh, thank you, and you finish the sentence for them so you can go back to your meal. Thank God I didn't do that this time. And she started to, this lady in her, mid-40s, started to talk. They lost a child, and the house was just full of grief, and their other child would not come out of the room. And they started to watch, the parents, this show, and stopped and went, oh, I think we need to involve our daughter. But they did. They got her out of the room to watch together, to watch this, and it brought what the story's about, a sense of family, a sense of community, a sense of sharing. You don't have to compartmentalize. But it was so touching to hear that. So this really, I'm so proud to be part of this show and this message.
I've been saying, this is kind of the show that we need right now. It's just the show that is like watch with your family, multi-generations. It's unlike anything else on television. How about you, Mary Elizabeth and Lila? What sort of reaction have you gotten from maybe family as well, and have you had sort of those kind of moments?
Yeah, I've had a lot of those as well. I think the beauty of social media is that we're now very available to hear about that kind of stuff, and I do my best to read all of the messages that I'm sent and respond. And the amount of messages that I got that said this show was very healing for me, for my mom, for whatever, was just really cool and beautiful. And not just here, like across the world. Like I'm getting messages from people in Europe and Asia and South America, just saying, I binged it in a weekend, or I actually, this girl reached out to me and said, I'm going to see my dad and he's been having like a really hard time. Not a health issue, just other issues, and I watched this with him, and I haven't gotten to see him smile and laugh in a long time, and we were smiling and laughing for 4 hours, and like that's just incredible. And I'm like, that's why I'm an actor. Like I want to know that. So it's just really cool that we're able to do that for people. I think it's a service, and I think it's important. It's not just fun silliness, even though we do get to have fun, but I think it's also important.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's the balance, right? I mean, and that's again one of Mike Schroep's specialties is, you know, there's so much of both. You'll be laughing hysterically 1 minute and then suddenly just bawling on your couch, or maybe that's just me. I'm you know, in my old age. But how about you, Mary Elizabeth? What has this show meant to you?
Yeah, I think, you know, a big thing that Mike talked to me about when I was first coming in was what's called the sandwich generation, which is where I am right now, where like you get your kids to a place where you're like, okay, maybe they're like almost ready to fly, and then you look back and your parents are like, help, and you're like, oh, okay, now I'm gonna take care of you because you took care of me when I was the kid's age, and so you're kind of in the sandwich of taking care of 2 other generations, and all you want is 4 hours of television to give you a break so you can sit on the couch and watch something together. But I had a very good friend who's in her 70s who called me and said she started the show and had to stop because she's going through dementia. She's my very good friend, and so it meant a lot to be able to she called me 2 days ago and said she finished and that it was so beautiful and it meant so much to her. So that was very special to share. And then I've also had teenagers be like, I love your show. And I'm like, Always Sunny in Philadelphia? You're too young to watch that. And they're like, no, A Man on the Inside. And I'm like, oh, great. I've done something that children can watch without me feeling bad. So thank you for that as well, Mike.
Nice redemption. Yes, Ted, you're about to say something.
Tons of people coming up to you, but
Yeah, I don't have anything that beats any of your stories. I was gratified to hear from a lot of people who said, I watched it with my parents or I watched it with my kids. That is the dream at some level. I think the advantage that TV has over movies is you invite it into your home and you get to watch characters evolve and change over multiple episodes. It's not just one story, it's several stories strung together. And I think when the covenant that you make with people in TV is, if you invite us into your home, we won't disrespect your home. And what that means to me is, if you invite me into your home, I'm going to do my best to tell a story that I think is worth telling, that will affect you in some way, will say something about the world, will have a point, a message, a meaning, will try to entertain you, will be funny. And the dream is to do all of that for everyone in the home, not just one generation or one aspect of the family, but the whole family. And if you can pull that off, I think that's a real bingo in TV. So this show was very much aimed at that. It was very much aimed at parents watching with kids. And when I say parents and kids, I mean 80-year-old parents and 50-year-old kids and 45-year-old parents and 12-year-old kids. And the number of different folks who said that was their experience was very gratifying, I would say.
and that's why we all like working with you. There's so much thought that goes. Anyway, never mind.
I do want to say, and it's been recognized, it's an AFI honoree for TV Program of the Year. Teddanson earned Golden Globe SAG for his first nomination for the portrayal of Charles. And season 2 is coming soon-ish.
We hope and assume around the first season dropped around Thanksgiving, which is a perfect time for it to emerge, and we're assuming / hoping that it will be roughly the same this year. Yeah.
Can we do a couple of shout-outs?
Let's hear some shout-outs.
Netflix. It is astounding when you have something that people want to watch, that around the world, all at the same moment, bam! So many people watch it. It was just like, kind of levitated for a week or two. It was so astounding. So thank you for that opportunity.
They've all been blowing up your phone?
No. And the other one is, if it's okay to say, it looks, I don't know how many people are residents here in this room, but I hear that we're piping it into their room. We're going through this period of, is Hollywood diminishing? It's shrinking. Can people still make a living here? Da, 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 da. I'm sorry, I'm hogging the microphone, but you say it so much better than I do, but thank you all for your service, for lack of a better word. Thank you for the work you did that allows us to be here. Thank you for creating the Hollywood that we all get to enjoy. Thank you so much.
And by the way, outside there are information booths for both the Motion Picture and Television Fund and also the Alzheimer's Association, where you can learn more about these organizations and supporting their communities. So please do as you join us for the reception afterwards. But a man on the inside, if you haven't, go right now. Actually, take out your phone. Watch these episodes as you're drinking and eating outside. It's on Netflix. Watch it again, watch it a third time, then get ready for season 2. Lovely, a man on the inside. Thank you all.